Hello, welcome back. This is my second episode of this little series that I'm planning on doing. Obviously, Formula One are about, and this one we're going to be talking about the Italian Grand Prix that's just gone. Um, Not the most eventful of races, but there are a couple of things that obviously we could obviously chat about. Obviously, Verstappen returning quite emphatically to the top of the podium. I mean, he took those four races without a podium. Yeah, quite badly by the looks of things, because he went and absolutely smashed it, didn't he? And then obviously the McLarens at the back end of the race, and what seems to have caused quite a bit of a stir online about how this championship is, yeah, how it's going down and how it seems to be playing out, which seems to be, I think to some people a bit odd, but I think for me there are a couple of very logical reasons actually as to why things are happening in a certain way with them. But anyway, well, we'll kick off first of all with Verstappen. I mean, what's more to say? I mean, an unbelievable lap in qualifying, obviously breaking the lap record for Monza, so therefore breaking the average, it's the highest average speed, I think, for a lap. I mean, I can't remember the number off the top of my head, but it was very, very quick. Um, what's very interesting about the whole Verstappen this time round is there seems to have been a bit of a conundrum between him and Red Bull, obviously on the Friday night going into Saturday, about which way to set up the car. From what the rumours are saying is that Red Bull wanted to set up one way, and Verstappen wanted to set it up in a different way. So Verstappen's one was adding less downforce, so you obviously have higher end top speed, but obviously then it's going to be a bit less grippy when you're going through the corners, obviously the chicanes, and obviously the less modes 1 and 2. And clearly, well, obviously Verstappen won out with that, and clearly that was the right way to go. But it does bear a question that if Horner was still in charge, would they have still would they have still gone down that route? Would they have overruled Verstappen and gone with the setup which maybe Red Bull were preferring, and maybe the aerodynamics department were saying, no, this would be the better way. Maybe the stats were saying, no, this is the quickest way. Would that have been different if there was a different set of people in charge? I don't know, but it's just something that instantly for me just came to mind. And clearly, Mecchi has obviously listened to Verstappen and got rewarded with his first win at Red Bull. Obviously, main race, obviously they've won a sprint already, so yeah, very, very good stuff. And then obviously got pole. Race start was a little bit iffy. Some people were talking about whether it should have been a penalty or not with pushing Lando on the grass. Personally, it's just, for me, it's not a penalty. One is Lando Norris didn't lose anything. I think sometimes people talk about consequences in a race. And for me, yeah, consequences should actually be a factor in all of this. And actually, the fact is, Lando Norris continued. He ended up actually taking the lead because Verstappen ended up losing the corner at turn one and obviously cutting turn two, having to give the position back. And then what was very, very clear is that Red Bull in its straight line speed was able to just stay within DRS and then just mince the McLaren going down into turn one a couple of laps later, and then he was just gone. It was constantly about 3, 4 tenths, 5 tenths quicker, just eking out the gap, and it was more of in terms of a dominant win, it was more like something we saw back in 2023. Just he got out in front, got out of DRS, and then just cruised into the distance, pitted when he needed to, and just cruised it home. Like there wasn't anything in terms of worrying about fastest laps and all that kind of stuff. He just literally just drove it very, very simple. I mean, he made it look easy, which obviously it isn't. But when we talk about Verstappen, of course, he makes a lot of things these days look easy. So is it entirely surprising that he'll just turn up somewhere where you're not really expecting him to do great things, stick it on pole, like we were talking about how close pole was going to be? I think it changed about 3 or 4 times. I think in Q3 about who was going to get it. Ferrari's looking quick at one point, and then McLaren's came back, and then obviously him going in at the end. So, quite frankly, I mean, it was the perfect weekend from him. Pole, win, fastest lap. I think also It's the quickest race in F1 history. I think it was about an hour and 13. I think that's another record he's now got to add to all the other records that he seems to be just accumulating. How many more he's going to get? Depends how long obviously he's going to be in the sport for. I think will depend on that number. I mean, obviously on that, but I mean, literally, it'll just be when he decides to stop because, with the way he's going, if he wants to go on for another 10 years, you could see him breaking everything. You could, but again, he needs to have the car underneath him, and if he doesn't have a car underneath him in 2026, and suddenly doesn't get anywhere in 2026, suddenly 2027, maybe the fastest team are all locked in, they don't need him. There might be a world where Verstappen ends up with 4 world championships, and you think, well, did he? And this sounds like a mad thing to say, but I think it does actually happen every now and again with people who have won loads. They go, could he have done more? I mean, people talk about Lewis Hamilton and the fact that there are actually probably 2, maybe even 3 world championships left on the table. 2007, obviously the controversy of 2021. Obviously that one could have gone obviously the other way. You've got 2010 where he suffered a puncture in Spain with a few laps to go. I think there was one other. I can't remember. Oh yeah, 2016, obviously with the engine failure in Malaysia. So 4 things there. I think Corinne Jandok even said that take 4 separate races across the history of Lewis Hamilton's career, and he ends up with 11 Formula One World Championships. So it's madness, and you can even see it with Verstappen now. That if he misses out on a couple of championships here and there, I mean, you could end up seeing him, win 4 championships, and you think he could have won more. Maybe some people may say he maybe should have won more. I mean, it's all down to luck at the end of the day, isn't it? Of ending up with the right car at the right time, and obviously then having the skill to be able to do it. I mean, if you talk about luck at the right time with a great driver, look at Fernando Alonso. Possibly the worst. I mean, he's probably in terms of the best skill to worst decision making, probably probably the worst that we've seen in certainly this century. I mean, I'm struggling to think of anything further back, but he's only got 2, and you could say that, like, if he'd scored 8 more points across an earlier point of his career, he could have got 5. It just shows how history is just can be rewritten so quickly. So, yeah, I mean, Verstappen, you want to see him up front. You want to see him fighting. You don't want to see him in an uber dominant car, but you want to see him fighting and scrapping for wins where he's having to defend. You look at what happened at the back end of 2024. You look at him in the beginning of this year with Japan and Imola, like fighting for wins, and just really putting down his, showing brilliance, putting down those markers to say, no, I am the guy. At this point in time, is he the best driver on the grid? Yes. Is he the best driver in terms of peak? I mean, it's impossible, isn't it? I mean, everybody says, "Oh, put him in the Mercedes," and it's like, would he do as well as the Mercedes? And I argue this question: would Hamilton done as well in that RB in that RB? What is it? 20 RB19 of 2023 when it dominated? I don't think Lewis Hamilton wins as many races as Verstappen, and I don't think Verstappen wins all the races that Hamilton did, because I just think the cars are set up for different driving styles. You look at Verstappen, he very much likes it on the nose. You look at Lewis Hamilton, he wants a stable rear end, so he can just chuck it in. So, saying about it. Anyway, going back to Monza, with Verstappen's race, obviously we don't need to, because actually there isn't really that much to talk about with Verstappen's race. He just dominated, he just stretched his leg, you see he made his tyres last. I mean, some people you see podcasts, and some people you see on places going, oh, he's lucky, all that kind of stuff. No, today it was just, you have to say nowadays that you've got all the behind him, and now he's also got fighting for wins in a car that isn't the most dominant on the grid anymore. He is up there with the drivers now who do win when they don't have the best car. You look at him, Schumacher did it, Hamilton, Senna, Lauda, all these guys, the great champions. They win, when their car isn't there. You look at Lewis Hamilton, he's probably won 3 world championships when he doesn't have the best car, being 2007, Not 2007, sorry. Hang on, what are we talking about? 2008. Following year, 2007, he should have won, but, you could argue about that car, because obviously there's Spygate that went on in that season. 2017, when Ferrari completely and utterly fell apart in Asia, you look at 2018, yeah, so you look at Verstappen, he's now winning championships. You could argue 2024, was he in the best car? For a lot of the season, probably not, but he built up such a gap that in history, as we've seen in F1, if you build up a big gap, it's very, very hard to close it back in. And you could probably say the second half of 2021, he didn't have the best of the car either. Like, you look at that Mercedes from like Brazil onwards, it was just a monster, and Verstappen realistically just had to just keep on finishing second, put his car in the right place, and evidently got the luck with the safety car to then do 2021. Yeah, this is turning into a little bit of a Hamilton and Verstappen comparison video here, but it's not meaning to. I'm just trying to sort of like put into comparison about what is going on, and this is just the thing with recent history that, you're looking at champions. The most recent one, obviously, in terms of multiple champions, is Lewis. And yeah, so Verstappen, do I expect him to do as well in Baku? No. Largely due to the fact that in Baku is cooler temperatures, and I think the Red Bull does struggle to get its car in its tyres in a window when it's cooler. You've got lots more of the slower speed corners, which it seems okay at, but you've also got a couple of high speed corners in there as well. And you also look at what happened last year with Norris starting P17 and MP, I think it was MP4 last year, and they finished the other way around, with Verstappen 5th and Norris 4th at the end of the race. So if that McLaren is going to be, if it was winning last year, you'd expect McLaren to be back up there fighting 1 and 2 this year as well. Speaking of which, McLaren. Right, I had a little bit of a, let's say, at the end of that race, a bit of a unusual opinion, let's just say, because I think most people on Twitter, most people in the podcast rooms, most people I think also in the paddock as well, in your media and that. I personally thought, there's obviously papaya rules, I'd say, that we get. You look at papaya rules. Papaya rules say, well, whatever they do, and clearly Oscar Piastri is abiding to them, because as soon as he was asked to let that position back through, he let it back through, right? Which says to me there's clearly some rules at play, which, maybe we don't know about. What I imagine is there are rules in place that say we are going to give team orders, in terms of like cars finishing ahead on the road, all the way up until the constructors is actually won. I think using that, some people say, oh, they're going to win it. No, but in terms of a black and white, put it in the sand, I think, when the constructors is won, I think that's when we're going to see Norris and Piastri just absolutely let loose, different strategies. We're already starting to see it. The weird thing is, obviously with the strategies and stuff, you've got, Oscar Piastri doing the 2-stop in Hungary. You've got Lando Norris doing the 1-stop in Hungary, and Lando Norris benefiting it out. So you're already starting to see different strategies start to lay out, although that one, you could argue again, was sort of forced by the fact that Norris was out of position, so the best way he was going to finish 1 or 2 in that race was 1 stop. So we're looking at that. But yeah, I'm now expecting it to probably kick off between Piastri and Lando once the constructors is won in Baku. So going forward from there, then you'll see. But the other thing I think people are forgetting is you've got this cost cap era that's going on. And the thing is with the cost cap era, right, is that if Piastri and Norris are going to have crashes like, Nico Rosberg and Hamilton did, it's going to take money out the cost cap for building next year's car. So for every crash that they possibly have, as the rain now starts to absolutely choke down on me, the problem is like if they do have lots of crashes, it then could offset how much development they can put into next year's car. And obviously, if you want to have multiple world championships, because one of them's going to do it this year, but if one of them wants to go on and win it again for McLaren next year, they're going to need a car that's good in 2026 as well. And if they're constantly crashing and taking money out the cost cap, then the the problem is they're not going to have a good car. The money's going to be wasted just replacing front wings, replacing rear wings, chassis, all that kind of stuff. So, do I think they're actually ever going to physically crash on this year? I don't know. I think it's going to get nasty, but I don't think it's going to get to the point where they're crashing into each other. I think one of them will push the other out, or one of them will undercut the other. Maybe it'll be like someone will be 2 or 3 seconds behind in, let's say, Mexico, and do an undercut and come out in front, and the person in front will be like, what on earth are you doing? Sort of thing. Or someone will do an absolute dive bomb. I mean, we've already seen it twice from Piastri, and it's gone, well, nearly very, very wrong for him. He nearly put it into the back of Norris in Austria and Hungary, of course. Yeah. Anyway, right, you can see the rain is proper starting to come down. I think it's starting to get to winter's weather here. I mean, it was full wet earlier on in terms of like the weather we've been getting this end of the country. But yeah, down here, just outside Bristol. But yeah, am I concerned about McLaren? No. Do I think that this is a bit like, I think some people have been referring it to like which makes sense beginning of the season. And if we don't like that, then face it, it's sort of time. And the problem is, right, is we're used to the only championship battle we've really had in the last few years in terms of the team was and that just got very, very nasty because I think that built up over 2 or 3 years. We had a couple of big incidents, but the first time it probably went all wrong was obviously Spain, and I think everyone's just wants another Spain. Maybe people just want to crash. I don't know whether people just want an incident, whether people want that for social clips. I don't know, or whether people just want it to be a full-on proper fight, which I think as we get towards the back end it will do. But I mean, the only way I think we're going to get a proper fight for the championship now, anyway, is if Piastri has an engine failure. Some people are joking about the fact that Lando has a problem, therefore Oscar has to have a problem. It's just like, those people on Twitter, podcasts and stuff, it's like, just get a grip and grow up. Well, this is Formula One, like things, if you don't like it, then, say your thing, but you've got to be kind of a bit, as you say, grown up about it. The fact is, yeah, do I think, probably people are now going to be asking, do I think that Piastri should have let Norris through? Yeah, and it's difficult because Lando clearly was thinking about Oscar in terms of getting him out first, in terms of making sure he gets the double podium, that kind of thing. So clearly Lando is thinking, pit Oscar, get him out, and then pit me. But yeah, if it's just a slow stop, should they really be swapping positions? I would argue no. I think on reflection, with everything all that's going on, yeah, I don't think it was the right call, but I just think I don't think it's the right call personally. It's it's going to be interesting because now I think there's several points now in this season where if Norris wins it by a certain amount or Piastri wins it by a certain amount, people are going to go, well, if Norris wins it by 6 points, we'll point it back to Monza. If Piastri wins it by 18, we're going to point it to Zandvoort, and it's already people have almost got ready to set up that whichever way this goes, the narrative's going to be, oh, you only won because of this. When actually, the reason they've won is because they have been absolutely unbelievable, and they're driving a car that's unbelievable, and they're putting it in places where it should be. You could argue Oscar at this moment in time has been a bit more consistent than Lando, you know, but would this have happened actually if Piastri didn't have such a lead in the championship? It's probably a bit more of a question I would like to ask. If Oscar, it was a 9 point lead, let's say, after Zandvoort, the difference between a 12 point lead and a 6 point lead is suddenly in percentage terms a lot bigger. In terms of a 34 point lead, it was going to be a 37 versus a 31. So Oscar still has over a win in hand. But if Oscar, let's say, has a DNF in Baku, he crashes with someone or his engine blows up, which can happen. We've seen it. It's just happened to Norris with obviously the oil failure. With the oil leak, I think it was in the chassis or something. So suddenly, if Norris wins in Baku, suddenly the gap's down to 6, and suddenly this whole thing in Monza, which probably could have been avoided, should have. Yeah. The problem is for McLaren is they brought it upon themselves. But the thing is, right, is if Lando had the slow stop first and then Piastri got the quick stop afterwards, that would have been more interesting, possibly, because I think Norris would have then had the fresher tyres on the undercut. It might have brought them out side by side. And I mean, and also they said free to race. The problem is you could say free to race in a previous generation of car, like the 2014 to 2016, the cars could follow each other, they could switch back each other. It was actually quite an underrated era in terms of the racing and switchbacking that we were seeing. But now the problem is you can't really race when you're in the same car, not unless you've got massively fresher tyres. I mean, even in Hungary, you could have 15 lap fresher tyres or whatever it was for Piastri, and you still can't get by. I mean, how can we, how can you say they're free to race when that's a thing? So I think that's also a thing. Is also people have ended up looking at this whole situation and going, well, you're saying Oscar's free to race, but he actually can't follow because of the regulations and the cars which the teams have built, which have obviously just destroyed any chance of good racing. Because actually, we were at the beginning of this era, we were seeing switchbacks. You obviously had the three goes Hamilton at Silverstone. You had, I think it was other people going side by side. I'm trying to use other ones. I think Saudi, there was people just going side by side, constantly switchbacking every lap, and we're just not getting that anymore. Everybody has to be 2 seconds behind in order to cool their cars down. So yeah, we can rant about that as well. But I think I don't think actually the whole debate is actually around the whole Norris Piastri, whether they should let through. There's a whole load of other issues actually going on with this championship and with this generation of car, which are just frustrating us. I think we just want to see some good racing, and because of the regulations, we can only pray for next season that we're going to get them. And maybe you do get them at the start of the race before people start adding on all sorts of stuff onto their cars and then disturbing the rear airflow. I mean, apparently they're trying to make sure that next year's generation you can actually follow, but as with all engineers, they seek to destroy the regulations and suddenly people can't follow. So, yeah, whatever that'll be. Yeah, well, ranting about those two things and sort of talking about Monza. We're moving on to obviously Baku. I'll do a little bit of a different chat about that one, just doing some quick predictions. But obviously, quick one now. Well, obviously, I'm going to be saying that Piastri and Leclerc are obviously two drivers to immediately watch out for. Because Leclerc just bangs in great laps and qualifying laps around that circuit, so I would not be surprised if he's on pole. And the same thing as last year with Piastri managing to pull a move on him, maybe into turn one. I'm already looking at that going. I can already see that happening straight away on lap 4 or 5, something like that. Because even in the Red Bull, the Ultra Red Bull dominating era, Leclerc was still, popping it on pole in Baku. Yeah. Apart from that, other things at Monza, Ollie Behrman, he's now 2 penalty points away from getting a race ban, so he now needs to start being careful. And he does go around Baku, so he should do all right. But again, rookie stuff going on. He just needs to again have, like I've said to a couple of other people, he just needs a clean weekend. He just needs a weekend where he's finishing like ninth, not really doing anything. And let's not talk about my prediction about Stroll, because again, why didn't I think field uber close? And it's going to depend on drivers nailing a lap. And yeah, he didn't nail the lap. So we'll ignore that and hope that again, like, yeah, he can. I say bounce back. How many times can he bounce back? I mean, he's extending his record. I don't know what number it is now for the most number of Q1's exits. I mean, he could be the first driver to get 100 Q1 exits, which would be a mad stat, and that would be a stat that would be unbreakable, I think. Um, for a guy that's got a pole position in the really difficult conditions of Istanbul 2020, to a person who's also, that same person having the most number of Q1 exits. I know he's have bad cars, but yeah, it can't, I mean, it can't be happening. But yeah, but anyway, I think, yeah, the wrong thing is I think it's great to see Verstappen back up at the front. I think it's just nice that actually we can just still see his brilliance every now and again, and it's just a little reminder that, you know what, it might have been dull and it does, get quite soul destroying when he won everything in 2023, but actually give him the respect that he is just a really good driver. Obviously he's been at Nürburgring as well. I think he's just aced that as well, and I think there are a lot of people absolutely raving about that, which I'm not surprised by at all. And yeah, we'll see with McLaren. But I think obviously papaya rules. Something with papaya rules will change, I think, after the constructors is done. And obviously we do have to consider cost cap stuff, because the more they crash, the slower I think McLaren will be going into 2026. And that obviously has to be something that's taken into account when when the guys are setting out the rules. And it's very boring. It's a massively kick in the face for us fans who just want to see, we just want to see them go constantly side by side and all that kind of stuff. But they probably can't afford Norris to go into the wall like he did in Canada again. They can't afford a double DNF maybe with what they've got planned for 2026, especially if Mercedes engines are going to be amazing. I think they've got Mercedes engines actually. But again, if let's say Ferrari's engine is equally good and Ferrari come out with a great car like they did in 2022 again, and you've got a Lewis Hamilton who's revitalised and a Charles Leclerc who's that much more experienced, who knows? It could be a very, very interesting season ahead for 26. So yeah, well, I'll leave it there, and let me know what you think. But obviously, any kind of comments, and if you disagree with me, that is absolutely fine. Anyway, take care.